The Backup Punter Podcast is brought to you by DynastySportsEmpire.com Fantasy Sports. Whether it's NFL, NBA, NHL, or Major League Baseball, DynastySportsEmpire.com has you covered. Fantasy leagues, content, rankings, projections, and more. So visit them online at DynastySportsEmpire.com. That's DynastySportsEmpire.com.
Looking for NFL football? Stop right here. You found your home for weekly NFL talk and fantasy football. Coming to you live from the BackupPunter.com. This is the Backup Punter Podcast. Now, here's your host, the man who thinks fullbacks win championships, Keegan Matheson.
Welcome back. It is episode 29 of the Backup Punter Podcast. My name's Keegan Matheson here with you again. We are going to talk fantasy football today. Week 6, what happened? Who did it happen to? Why did it happen? And what does it mean for you going forward into Week 7, where you are either trying to salvage a season, push a lead, push into the playoffs. So we'll get lots of waiver advice for you later in the show because there are some big bye weeks coming up. Packers are on a bye this week, so as a biased fantasy owner, I've got a lot to deal with. I'll tell you a bit about that later. And we'll go through our weekly studs and duds, 3 up, 3 down, all that good stuff. So if you watched Monday Night Football last night, first, I'm very sorry. Just know that I'm here for you, and know that there are resources. There are people to talk to for what you saw. That was some god-awful football, wasn't it? And maybe, like a lot of you, maybe I just kept flicking back because I didn't want to miss the Star Wars trailer, which, by the way, fantastic. I feel like I should pay double for my movie when I go to see Star Wars. They're going to ask me for $12. I'm going to say I need to at least pay you $25 to watch this movie. It looked great. But the football. Sam Bradford, again, is really fortunate to have a crappy day at the office overshadowed by a win. Philadelphia Eagles pulling even with the New York Giants, both at 3-3. The Giants look awful. We'll have a bit of them in 3 up, 3 down. You can guess which category they're in. But it keeps going. These primetime games this week, of course, Thursday night football is always going to be bad football. But Monday night, Sunday night, it's getting a little monotonous, isn't it? Now, Sunday night's game this week looked to be a great one. Indianapolis Colts, New England Patriots. There's a storyline there. I don't know what it is. And it was a very good game, and the Colts were doing what they wanted. They were staying involved in the game, which is what the Colts have really tried to build their roster towards. A roster that can stick in games, unlike the AFC Championship last year, where they got their face kicked in by the Patriots. They get all the way to the end. They're doing, okay. They're sticking around. And Chuck Pagano makes that play call. The worst call that I have seen on a football field in my life. And people have compared it to, the butt fumble, maybe that, Michigan versus Michigan State punt this week. But those were both plays that just turned out poorly. This was a play call that was doomed from the start. Miscommunications, this and that. A disaster. And there's a lot of blame on Chuck Pagano this week, as there should be. He has, a lot of holes in his coaching attributes, I think. But he is a fine coach. An incredible person. Really like the guy. But, again, this just highlights the Colts' shortcomings as a front office, as a team. Now, that one play isn't something to put on the GM. That's ridiculous. But they continue to be built in not quite the right way, in my opinion. You can look back to that Trent Richardson trade. Forever. That will be forever one of the worst trades you'll see. Thankfully, that's dead and gone, but they have not grown strength. They've not built a foundation in the areas where they need. They need some impact defenders to help out Vontae Davis. That Vontae Davis trade, that was a good one. Let's give them credit for that. But you can't just expect Andrew Luck to bring up the talent level of everyone around him. They need something else there. So Indianapolis, that was tough. That was an ugly one. So we'll get into our weekly 3 up, 3 down as the Toronto Blue Jays pull within one game of the damn Kansas City Royals in the ALCS. I had that on last night. Also had the Canadian election on for a lot of my American listeners. They elected a prime minister, which is equivalent to the president. The Queen does not rule Canada as directly as some of you may think. And there was a new prime minister elected, much like you folks are going to have Donald Trump quite soon. So we can relate over our exciting newness and the great directions of our countries. So going into 3 up, 3 down, 3 teams that went up in my books this week. I don't believe in power rankings anymore. I think that's just a waste of your time. It's clickbait. I don't care about them. I haven't read power rankings all year because, frankly, I think they're stupid. They don't mean anything. They don't mean anything. So let's just do 3 up, 3 down each week. First team that is up in my books, Pittsburgh Steelers. And let's take a minute to talk about all these teams here. The Pittsburgh Steelers at 4-2 are doing miracle work. Mike Tomlin is doing miracle work. Michael Vick, in the first half on Sunday, that might have been the worst quarterback play that I've seen in 2015. And there has been a lot of shitty quarterback play in 2015. For a good chunk of it, he had negative yards. Antonio Brown had negative 2 yards. I think up until Landry Jones made his way into the game. And looked great, by the way. My bet's on Landry Jones to start this week if Ben Roethlisberger can't. I think Mike Vick is out anyways with either a calf or a hamstring, a slight tear. So that takes care of that. But the Pittsburgh Steelers, Martavis Bryant is back. Have more on him in a second. Le'Veon Bell, of course, absolutely fantastic. Now, left tackle Kelvin Beachum, looks like he's gone for the year. That's a big hit. They need Roethlisberger back. They need him back fast. But this defense, for all its flaws, has held together. They've done enough. And they've been very well coached. This is a team where, even as I looked at it today, I knew their record was 4-2, but I made myself double check. I thought 4-2, the Steelers, with Michael Vick as the quarterback. Michael Vick has to be one of the strangest personnel decisions that I saw this year. He doesn't fit the Steelers. He doesn't fit the NFL anymore. I don't know, but they've won the games. For better or for worse, they have left the week 1-0 the last couple of weeks, and that's all that matters. So the Steelers are up in my books. When they get Roethlisberger back and he can involve Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant, still Marcus Wheaton in there, and Le'Veon Bell is going to come alive, it's going to be one of the best offenses in the league. The second up is the Miami Dolphins. Finally, some life after Joe Philbin leaves. And first up, I saw a lot of just crap tweets about, wow, how much did the Dolphins hate Joe Philbin? That's not what was going on. Joe Philbin is one of the best guys in the game, universally respected. This was just a thing where they needed a fresh voice, a fresh take on what was happening, and it has really helped them. They have changed their strategy on the field. Lamar Miller finally got the football. More on him in a second, too. The defense looked a little inspired. Ndamukong Suh looked like he gave a damn, which he sure has not done the last few weeks. Everything just had some energy to it. There was a reason to play the game. They moved up to 2-3. And their defense comes back into the conversation as an interesting option in fantasy, too. If they're not still owned in your league, someone might be holding on to them for dear life. But Miami is legitimate again. They're not good yet, but they're legitimate. They're not going to get steamrolled. And Ryan Tannehill, I've seen him dropped in a few leagues. Maybe this is the time to stream Tannehill because we all had him as the breakout quarterback this year. I'm sure there's a bunch of idiots out there saying, oh, I knew all along he wouldn't. But yeah, congratulations. We'll send you a ribbon. But Tannehill, this might be the time because he's talented. He can pick up those 2-3 points a week with his legs. I love that. So Miami, team to watch. And then the Carolina Panthers beating the Seattle Seahawks. Again, I'm just leaving Seattle off the 3 up, 3 down. I don't know what to make of it. And I'm not going to try to make anything of it. They are so close. They are so close to having a great record and being headed towards the playoffs. I still think they're going to find some way to go towards the playoffs, but something's got to give here. But the Carolina Panthers continue to play excellent defense, especially against the pass. I'm really impressed with that. And Cam Newton continues to be one of the more valuable players in this league. He's the best goal line back in the league. And Jonathan Stewart also got it going. Now, if they could ever get Cam Newton a wide receiver, and Devin Funchess has potential, Kelvin Benjamin will be back next year, but those are both one type of receiver. He needs a downfield receiver, but not just a deep threat, a guy that can create downfield, a receiver. But that's an issue for another year. He's making it work so far, and Cam Newton shouldering the load. So those are the 3 up: Pittsburgh, Miami, Carolina. On to the 3 down. And I'm going to be the asshole that gives Denver a downvote this week, despite moving to 6-0 undefeated. Now, there has been a big divide on the Denver Broncos, and just watching Twitter, watching the reaction online during that Broncos game was fascinating, because it was a great battle between Peyton is dead and a bunch of people on their high horse, of course, which is all Twitter is. Now, Peyton Manning looked bad. Period. There's no narrative here. I'm not going to make this into something about how he's old. I'm not going to make this into Peyton's done, his arm. He just looked bad. However old he is, whatever is happening, he looked bad playing quarterback, and he's looked bad the last few weeks. That's a problem. It's a big problem. We'll have a little more on him in a bit, too. We'll talk about Peyton Manning. But with the Denver Broncos, they should have lost that game. Cleveland handed it to them on a silver platter. Now, Denver's defense, of course, excellent. If you're going to give the credit to anyone, again, give it to Denver's defense. But with the Broncos here, all game long, you saw a lot of reaction online. It was, oh, Peyton's done. And then when they came back and won in overtime, there were just the high horse champion heroes with blazing hair of Twitter saying, hey, idiots, Peyton's not done. Oh, I guess Peyton's done. Look at that win. Shut the hell up. That's not what this is about. It's not about you being right, because you're not. That win did not have anything to do with Peyton Manning. They won in spite of Peyton Manning. Them winning in overtime does not change the story on Peyton Manning, in my books. He's still exactly what he is. He is a poor quarterback being carried along by his defense. Now, would it surprise me if Peyton Manning went out next week, threw for 300, 70% of his passes with a couple touchdowns? No, it wouldn't. I still think he has a bit of that left in him. I really do. But week to week, we're seeing this almost a regression. The arm is not there. So I worry about Denver, not in the regular season, probably not even in round 1 of the playoffs, but I don't know about them going and winning a Super Bowl with Peyton Manning playing the way he is. That's it. I'm not one of these people saying the Broncos are screwed, Peyton's done, they're going to blow up. It's not what's going to happen, obviously. Ronnie Hillman got that run game going a little bit more this week. I still think C.J. Anderson is going to click eventually. And I'm not just saying that because I have him in a league. I really do think that. I don't think Ronnie Hillman is that every down back, of course. And the defense is going to stay strong. DeMarcus Ware hopefully gets back here soon. Had a back injury. But I'm just not that excited about the Broncos. A lot of these undefeated teams I'm not that excited about. The Packers even gave us a lot of reason to worry this week. Phillip Rivers passed for 500 yards on them. Their offense looks out of sync. Eddie Lacy. Ugh. Keep going with 3 down. We have the New York Giants. 3-3 after their loss on Monday Night Football. Looked bad. Could not stop even the Eagles and their running game. I wish something would click in that run game. Rashad Jennings, sluggish. Andre Williams, a back I love. One of my favorite running backs to watch in college when he was at BC. He doesn't have that pop. He's not creating anything. And Shane Vereen, well, he's not really a between the tackles guy, not being used as that. So there's no life in that offense outside of Odell Beckham Jr. and his hair and his ego. And that hair and ego just kind of look dumb when you're losing. So something has got to happen in New York. Maybe something comes of Jason Pierre-Paul. He's expected to meet with the team some point today, I believe. So we'll see an update on him. But the Giants are just in that middle ground where you don't want to be. And then, really down this week, Kansas City Chiefs. Without Jamal Charles, what are the Chiefs? is what I want to know. They looked very poor on offense this week. Jeremy Maclin left with a concussion. How long is he going to be gone? We don't know yet. Albert Wilson would be their starting receiver if he doesn't go next week. You're probably asking, who is Albert Wilson? My answer is exactly. The Chiefs are 1-5. They aren't going anywhere this season, I don't think. Andy Reid, as much as I love the guy, as a coach, I don't know. So what I'm going to ask you is, wouldn't this season be the perfect time for KC to really blow it up? I think if management there is smart, and if they're really progressive, and if they are very confident in their job security, which I don't know if they can be, if the Chiefs really flop this year, if they head towards a top 5 pick, maybe even a top 3 pick, would this not be a great time to, A, move on from Andy Reid, and B, try to change the entire philosophy of this team? They've got a good defense, but on offense, this thing they have going with Alex Smith, it's not going to work. I don't think it's going to work as it is right now, especially without Jamal Charles and him coming back, hopefully healthy next year, but you don't quite know. What if they have an opportunity to take one of the top quarterbacks in this draft? I know they owe Alex Smith a good chunk of money, but can they really pass up on that opportunity for an elite starting quarterback? They can't. Not for Alex Smith, who's a quarterback I do really like. A very underrated quarterback, I feel, and one that's been underappreciated just because of his draft status. But Kansas City couldn't stand there and say, we're okay with Alex Smith. Let's just keep building around him with this conservative offense. If I'm a Chiefs fan, that would really sour me. So Denver, the Giants, and KC, 3 teams that represent one end of the spectrum, the other end, and the middle. So let's get on to your studs and duds, and then we will move into some weekly waiver ads, and we'll get you out of here. Studs for this week, Blake Bortles. He was a hot ad last week. I suggested adding him. He put up 331, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, but hey, Bortles is proving that he can be a pure numbers producer. Is he going to win? Who cares? Is it going to be pretty? I don't care again. But he's going to put up numbers, which is what we need for fantasy football purposes. 331, 3-3, that's a decent line for me. At RB1, Lamar Miller, 19 carries for 113 and a touchdown. It's amazing what happens when you give one of the most talented running backs in the league the football. It's a very complex idea. I'm glad Miami has grasped it. At RB2, I'm thrilled to give it to Jonathan Stewart against the Seahawks of all teams. 20 carries for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is what Jonathan Stewart owners need. I know he's been dropped a lot lately, but he's still starting running back on an undefeated team. And they're going to need him to pick it up just a bit. So that was a good week for him. Wide receiver 1, Martavis Bryant. 6 catches, 137, 2 scores. Big week from him. There will be weeks where Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell just take over and snuff him out a bit, but he is obviously a must-start in all formats. No rust there. Physically, he is tough to rival. So he's the wide receiver 1 on the stud team this week. Number 2, we've got Alshon Jeffrey. And I give that to him because he has come back from a lot of uncertainty with that injury. 8 catches, 147, and a score. Then wide receiver 3, Calvin Johnson. He went for 6, 166, and a score. Those are the type of passes they need to get to Calvin Johnson, where they just get him downfield and they can throw one up. Even if he has to come back for the ball, work around a cornerback, But that's where he's at his best, when he is just physically matched with a corner, because he's not creating as much separation as he once did. So hopefully the Lions can take a little bit from that game plan and turn it in to next week, where I think they have the Vikings next week. Because that really helped Matt Stafford as well. Some people that are clinging to Matt Stafford for, I guess they knew more than we did this week. That was a big week for that Lions team. And thankfully got them back in the win column, because it's been a hard ride for those Lions fans. We love them. And then tight end 1 with 7 catches for 131 and a score, Greg Olsen. After a slow start, this guy is legit, and he's back. Then the defense of the week, the stud defense. If you rolled out Miami versus Tennessee, they allowed 10 points, 6 sacks, 2 interceptions, forced a couple fumbles, scored a touchdown. That's all you want. And again, I love winning fantasy football with defense points. Most important spot in your roster. I'll argue that till the day I die. Now let's look at the dud team, and I'm going to shock all of you with my quarterback one. It's Peyton Manning. 290 yards, a touchdown, 3 interceptions. The one that really stood out to me was the interception in overtime. It was a lob pass, and Mingo came down with it. It was just one of these passes where you watch it go into the air, and you just get a feeling in your stomach, and you say, why? Why did you do that, Peyton? And he's never had a rocket arm. We all know this. We all know the story with Peyton Manning. He gets by on being smarter than everyone, on being not just 1 step ahead of the game, but 2 steps ahead of the game. What I saw against the Browns was that Peyton Manning's arm was taking him back that full step, that full 2 steps, and putting him on an even playing surface. He's not used to that. But these passes, there is so little arm strength behind them. Now, he can still drive the odd one, and he does it, kind of an FU pass whenever he gets the chance. But passes like that overtime interception, it's something you see in a junior high game. It's just a little lob, it was almost like a shot put. It's ugly. But we've harped on Peyton enough on this show. He's done good things before in other seasons, I've heard, so we'll give him a bit of a pass. RB1 on the dud team by a mile, Eddie Lacy of the Packers. 4 rushing attempts for 3 yards. Added a couple of receptions for 17, whatever. He was limited, in my opinion, for performance issues, not just for health issues. He's got a bad right ankle, but James Starks led that backfield. Rushed for over 100 yards, added a receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown, and just looked better. Eddie Lacy looked slow. He looked uncertain. He wasn't hitting his holes. This is worrying if you're a Lacy owner because you expect him to be slow out of the gates. Last year through September, he was bad. Wasn't looking good. A lot of people tried to unload him. This year, maybe you get into week 4 and you're waiting for him. Well, week 5, you're worried. Now it's week 6. Through week 6, there is reason to be worried with Eddie Lacy because if games continue to go like this, I don't know how much he's going to ramp up. What I mean by that is that right now it looks like he's on a short enough leash that if he goes out there on his first 5-6 carries and only produces 10 or 11 yards, Mike McCarthy is confident enough in James Starks to go to him. And that really torpedoes Eddie Lacy because Lacy is one of these running backs like Frank Gore, someone like that, who needs to build up carries. Kind of like we saw from Todd Gurley a couple weeks ago in that breakout game. He'll run into a wall, but then late in the game, he will break through, burst out. Well, what if he doesn't have the opportunity to do that? What if he runs into the wall and then he's taken out of the game? So for a guy that ESPN ranked as their number 1 running back going into the year, you're pissed off if you're an Eddie Lacy owner right now. RB2 from that same game, Melvin Gordon. 7 rushes for 29 yards, 2 fumbles, 1 of them lost. That's worrying because anytime you see a fumble, you know that he's going to lose a little playing time the next week, probably. They've got Brandon Oliver there, who's still a talented guy. Danny Woodhead, who is the king of stealing touches. So keep an eye on that one. Wide receiver 1 of the dud team, Antonio Brown, 3 catches for 24. Killed my week, but it's okay. Love you, Antonio. Wide receiver 2, Randall Cobb from the Packers. 2 for 38. He was struggling to get open downfield. His shoulder is not right, not all the way back. And without a deep threat, there's a lot of eyes on Randall Cobb in Green Bay. They're going into a bye week. Then they have Denver coming out of it, so a chance to get healthy, but then it's a very scary matchup for Randall Cobb. He will be a bit more of a wide receiver 2 coming out of that break than a top-end wide receiver 1. Wide receiver 3 on the dud team, A.J. Green, 4 catches for 36. He and Tyler Eifert really did get blanketed in their game. That's going to happen sometimes, but thankfully for them, the Bengals still performed, they still produced, so teams aren't exactly going to double them that strongly next time around. The pendulum will swing. Tight end 1, it wasn't a bad week for tight ends. I shouldn't even be giving a tight end one dud team, but I'll give it to Martellus Bennett out of speculation. Now, he caught 6 balls for 59 yards. That's a fine week from your tight end. 5.9 points, not great, but you can't be all that disappointed. But this is the point in nearly every season where Martellus Bennett starts to trend downwards. If you are a Martellus Bennett owner and you have another option on your bench or maybe a good one on the waiver wire, right now is a good time to try and trade Martellus Bennett. Even if you just get a good weekly streamer or a nice fourth receiver that you can put out a couple times to cover for buys, something like that. But if I'm a Martellus Bennett owner right now, I'm pulling the parachute, personally. And then the dud defense of the week, Arizona Cardinals against Pittsburgh. I thought they would have been a great play with Mike Vick back there, but they only produced 1 sack and no turnovers. So that was a bit of a weird one for me. A bit of a weird one. And then let's get on to your waiver ads. On to the waiver additions, and you will find these when the podcast is posted too at thebackuppunter.com. And don't forget to follow along on Twitter. On Twitter at thebackuppunter. On Facebook as well. And anytime you want a question answered on the show, feel free to email it in, thebackuppunter@gmail.com. You can also hit me up on Twitter. Again, that's at thebackuppunter. So waiver ads for this week. Again, we're not looking for gold on the waiver wire at this point in the year. We're just looking for a little bronze to get through another week. In a couple of my leagues, I'll tell you 2 of them. In one league, it's a standard roster league. I've got Aaron Rodgers on a bye, Denver's defense on a bye, my kicker on a bye, and then I've got Travis Kelce on a bye. And it's a league where I have a very good bench. I think my bench is, what is it? It's Eric Decker I've got on the bench. Then I have Christine Michael on the bench, who I'm not going to get rid of. Alfred Morris on my bench. Carlos Williams. It's just a bench where I look around and there's no stars, but I can't bring myself to drop anyone. So it's put me in a weird position. A very strange position. So I'm going to have to get creative, take a patient approach this week. And then in another one of my leagues, this is my one I've mentioned a few times, where we just have big rosters. 8 teams, but big rosters to make it, the same amount of rostered players as a 12-team league. I have 9 players on a bye. Over half my roster is on a bye this week. Just from some untimely drafting and a lot of waiver additions. So it is a situation where I am going to have to dedicate a few hours. I'm going to have to just sit down, make some coffee, make some hard choices. Call some guys into the office, tell them I've appreciated your contributions to the team, but you got to go because everyone took vacation this week. It's difficult. So here are some of the names I will be looking for and that you should be looking for on your waiver wire today, tomorrow, leading into Week 7. At quarterback, again, these names are going to get familiar as we go through because you've got the same people available for streaming. But Blake Bortles, again, producing numbers up against the Buffalo Bills defense that doesn't scare me as much as I thought it would. Ryan Fitzpatrick versus the New England Patriots. That Patriots defense has allowed points to quarterbacks. And Ryan Fitzpatrick is a guy underrated, and I think he's usually a good bet for a safe week of production. He's not a guy I don't think that's going to go out and give you 7 points and ruin your week. And then, believe it or not, I'll even suggest Brian Hoyer against the Miami Dolphins as a desperation, a dart throw guy, if you can't grab Bortles or Fitzpatrick. If not, what league are you in? But Brian Hoyer, he's better than, I guess, the remaining few options. At running back, if Christine Michael was not added in your league already, he should be the number 1 waiver priority overall in your league this week. He is getting first-team touches at running back, and to find a running back with the potential of being the lead dog with that offensive line in Week 7 is big. Now, thankfully, I saw the tweet right when it came across the wire several days ago that the Cowboys were planning on kind of taking the reins off Christine Michael, and I went to my 3 leagues, and I went add. I gobbled him up. Maybe he turns into nothing, but whatever. It's a chance that you need to take, and it's a guy that you need to stash on your roster. I don't know if I'm going to start him this week, unless I'm desperate. In that league where I have 9 people in a bye, I'm going to start him. Obviously, I have to. I might have to start myself. But you need to roster Christine Michael. Then at running back, James Starks. We mentioned him. He's going into a bye week, so only do this if you can afford to, going into a bye week. But this is a great one to roster and monitor. You don't always have to roster a guy who is instantly going to be a great option. I'm a big fan of just having that spot on my roster where I pick a guy up and keep an eye on it for the week. What is the situation going to be versus Denver? Is James Starks going to get those lead touches, or maybe the Packers come out and say, Eddie Lacy's our guy. He's going to start. We're going to give him some bulk carries. And in that case, you just get rid of Starks. Then Ahmad Bradshaw would be a back-end guy, I would suggest, if you're looking to fill that last spot on your roster or take a flyer this week. Ahmad Bradshaw of the Colts, he's running behind Frank Gore, but he is going to work into an expanded role, certainly a passing game role. And we saw last year how effective he can be. If you're a Frank Gore owner, he's a necessary handcuff, and he's playing the Saints this week. So there is potential. Don't think I'd be even starting him as a flex this week, but a guy worth being on a roster. At wide receiver, we'll go back to the Packers again here. I've seen Devontae Adams dropped in some leagues. He's going into a bye, but if he's been dropped in your league, I'd pick him up right now. He is going to step right into a starting role on that offense that really needs a shot in the arm in the passing game. So Devontae Adams, don't let him be in free agency, even though he's got a bye. Brandon LaFell against the Jets. He's due to come off the physically unable to play list, and he's going to get right in there with Tom Brady. Would I start him this week? No. I'd wait a week, see what happens, and especially with the unpredictable nature of any Patriots player, it's tough, but he has to be rostered in all leagues. Then Minnesota's Stephon Diggs versus the Detroit Lions. His last two games, he's had 19 targets, 13 receptions, 216 yards. Looks like he might overtake Charles Johnson's job in that offense, the starting role. And Teddy Bridgewater loves him. Rookie, I think 5th round rookie. Tons of talent. And in a Minnesota passing offense where the options aren't really producing, Teddy Bridgewater needs a guy. Stephon Diggs is someone I'll be looking at this week. And then someone I mentioned earlier, of the Chiefs, Albert Wilson. Not a great receiver, but this is a situation of opportunity. If Jeremy Maclin cannot go this week against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have a pretty weak secondary, if Maclin can't go, Wilson will be the de facto number one receiver. What does that mean? Might not mean much, but if there's a number one receiver on the waiver wire, you can't just let him sit there. I'd chuck out Wilson as a dart throw flex play if I needed one. Wouldn't feel great about it, but again, opportunity often trumps talent. And if you need a tight end this week, I know I do as a Tyler Eifert owner, I'll give you one to monitor. If you're going to monitor someone, keep an eye on Jordan Reed through the week, dealing with a concussion still, but if he comes back, he could get a lot of targets. Monitor him. Then, of course, Benjamin Watson. He's facing the Colts this week. He went off against the Falcons in Week 6. 10 receptions, 127 yards, and a touchdown. He's not going to do that again, but he has the eyes of Drew Brees. Eric Ebron may come back from a knee injury this week versus the Minnesota Vikings. He's certainly worth a dart throw, all the talent in the world, if he comes back. And then if I need a flyer, an absolute flyer, I might look at Crockett Gilmore. He's facing the Arizona Cardinals. 6 targets for 3 receptions and 30 yards last week. Maybe I throw a dart at him and hope he finds the end zone. Then looking at defense, what defenses are we going to stream this week? I'm a Denver Broncos owner, so I'm going to be looking for a couple. One that I'll be looking at if there's no top-end defenses available in my league. Now, of course, if there's St. Louis or a great defense that someone's dropped in your league, go for it. But I always try to find a few of those very minimally owned defenses to look at here. One I'd look at is the Atlanta Falcons versus the Tennessee Titans. Marcus Mariota, will he play next week? I don't know. Will he be 100%? I don't think so. Tennessee doesn't have any running game. They've given up some big points to opposing defenses. And Atlanta, they do have some life on defense now. Is it working? Well, not every week, but there is something there, finally. Pittsburgh Steelers. I've said it a couple times already on this show. I feel like they're the star of the show. Not a great defense by any means, but they've been getting it done, and they're facing the Chiefs, who have no Jamal Charles and maybe no Jeremy Maclin. So they can blanket Travis Kelce and they should make it out okay. And then if you're looking for a deep sleeper defense, I like the Washington Redskins versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A, because I like to play anyone facing Jameis Winston, but the Redskins have been an extremely underrated defense. Extremely underrated. Mostly because we see Redskins and we think, Redskins suck. Come on. But their defense is getting it done. Even if someone scoops up Washington, you could flip the script. Scoop up Tampa Bay, who's facing Kirk Cousins, an offense that they might be without their passing back. Alfred Morris isn't getting much done. Matt Jones is banged up. Deshaun Jackson's still out. Jordan Reed has a concussion. You know what I'm saying here? It's one of those games where you think there's going to be a lot of turnovers. I'd prefer to grab Washington, but if I'm stuck with Tampa Bay as a last gasp, hey, why not? So hopefully those waiver ads help get you through another week, help you overcome some bye weeks, which just suck. Bye weeks. When you're drafting, you forget all about them. Through the first 4 weeks of the season, you are just cruising. No bye weeks, very minimal injuries, and life is good. But we get to this point, and the injuries are piling up. Bye weeks are stacking up. And for a lot of rosters, like yours, like mine, it's putting us in some tough situations. Sometimes you have to kill your darlings. You have to cut people you don't want to cut. But onwards and upwards. So this has been episode 29. I thank you again for tuning in, for downloading, listening over YouTube, however you get the show. I know it's not by accident. So again, I really do appreciate the support of the podcast. If you're not subscribed, maybe if you're listening to this on YouTube and you'd rather subscribe, get it straight to your phone, it's available on Stitcher for Android or also on the iTunes store. And it's free, like all podcasts. Hey, the best part about them. So head over there to iTunes, subscribe to the show, and you will get it each and every week. And it usually hits iTunes a good couple hours before it hits YouTube. So there's a little advantage there because I know everyone is just kind of going through the motions at work on Tuesdays, waiting for the Backup Punter podcast, all two of you. So thank you again. My name's Keegan Matheson, hoping that all of your punts in life stop on the 1 yard line. Best of luck, and we will talk next week.